Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Caccera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Caccera.
Welcome in, it's Joe Caccera with Real Estate Radio Live, the podcast series. As we continue through the week, Mike D'Ambrosio and I are sitting alongside here on Tuesdays, as we always are, and working on topics with the focus, as always, to help educate and inform you, the consumer. And we hope we continue to do that. As a reminder, if you want to let us know what you think or give us a great review, go to reradiolive.com, or you can go to iTunes and let us know what you think. And before we get started, too, we got a great topic for you today. Just a reminder, if you need any help on buying, selling homes, or maybe your head's spinning right now and you're wondering, what in the world should I do in a market like this? Mike's here to help. On the real estate side, you could contact him 408. What is it, Mike? 408?
Yeah, 408-630-0101.
Right. And then Mike Sells, is that right?
MikeDsells.com.
MikeDsells.com. And then on the financing side, you could reach me 408-838-9060 or email me joe@reradiolive.com. We're going to try to stick with the theme. We talked yesterday a little bit about timing of the market, what you should do on the real estate financing side. Today, a little bit the same, but with a market like this, what we really try to do, Mike and I, is bring pertinent information to the market. In other words, in a market where you have low inventory, people are really struggling to try to figure out what's going on. We want to bring possible options and solutions to you based on those challenges. In other words, it doesn't do us any good, particularly today, to talk about, maybe some weird thing that's going on in North Carolina or something like that. Not that that's not interesting, but you know what I mean? That makes sense, right?
Yeah,
we want to try to bring information that you could take away and use.
Absolutely.
So today we're going to talk about the ability to buy without selling your home. That's right, buy without selling your home, and I'll let Mike kind of get started and tell you a little bit about the challenges as a realtor, what's going on right now. Give us kind of an overview, Mike. First of all, obviously we know well-documented, low inventory, but tell us some of the challenges that you see right now, particularly in a market like this.
Yeah, I think, the main challenge is always the whole contingency.
Yeah.
Of selling your home. So to explain that kind of in layman's terms is basically you're selling your house. You want to buy another property. Well, in order to do that, when you're placing offers on new properties, you're going to have a contingency within your offer to sell your home in order to buy the other house, because of your qualification, or you need the money from that house you're selling to buy the other property. So the seller on the other side is looking. So let's say they get 3 offers, and you're one of the 3 offers, and you're the only one that has a sale contingency and a couple other contingencies like loan, appraisal, and investigation. And then the other 2 offers don't have a sale contingency, but only have the other 3. And let's say the prices are all the same on all of them,
right,
for examples purposes. Who are they going to really talk to more? Probably the 2 with the least amount of contingencies possible. And on top of that, just because you have a sale contingency, the thing within the sale contingency is okay, do you have your house priced right? Is it going to sit on them? If they go with your offer, your house has to sell to buy their house. So now they have to worry. Not only do they have to worry about you securing financing and doing good on all the other contingencies, but then they got to worry about your property selling. Do you have it priced right? Are you a hard seller? Are you allowing showings? Does your house look like crap? They have to think about all of this stuff on your side. I've had this happened before, where they come and check out the property before even looking at your offer, and so I guess maybe I'm hoping I'm painting a picture here of how many things are involved in a seller deciding to go with an offer with a contingency for sale of the buyer's property.
Yeah, it is challenging, and you'll notice it, you'll see it, you'll witness it if you've done it. Maybe some of you are listening to this show thinking, oh my God, I've been through this before that Mike talks about. So it's a dilemma and it's a challenge. So we're going to talk today, focus specifically in this podcast about your options, what you can possibly do. And I'm not suggesting that everybody could do these, but these are the things that we could help you with in preparing to be able to buy a house without selling your home. So,
and real quick, I don't. Before we get started on that, I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer about the whole sale contingency thing, because it is possible if you're working with a good professional agent that knows what they're doing, knows how to price your property, how to prep it right, knows how to present your offer to another listing agent with the sale contingency. I mean, it can all work. It's going to be another peg against you, but it can work and it's doable. And if you have a good professional person you're working with, it's doable. Yeah. But with all of that being said, listen to the rest of the podcast and maybe we'll provide you some information that will allow you not to have to worry about it at all. That's all I wanted to say. I'm not saying it's impossible, but now listen forward and we'll help you out. Yeah,
well, we'll give some examples. And before I do that, you brought up a good point, and I'll just say this quickly, and we've talked about this before, but I can't stress enough over and over and over again, it'll be redundant, but what Mike just talked about, there is a lot to working with the right agent. I mean, it's easy, seriously. If you're looking to sell your home and it's a normal market, average market, blah, 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 it just flies off the market, a lot of people will say, well, it's easy, why can't I do it myself? There's this and that. But let me tell you, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
And what we're going to talk about today is why I can't be more serious about finding an agent that understands the business and the market and what's going on in the environment. And here's why. What Mike just described is true. When you have a lot of moving parts and you have someone that says, listen, Mike, I really want to sell my house, but I want to be able to buy a house. What do I do? What kinds of things will I do? Well, Mike will sit down and walk them through it and actually give them situations and options, and this is what would happen. This is what you might do. This is what you might consider. I could tell you for 100%, with 100% certainty, that less than 10% of agents really have that kind of knowledge.
Yeah.
To walk, don't you think?
Absolutely.
In a situation like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
That have the answers for this.
Yeah, agreed. And likewise on the lending side of things, we're going to talk about a lot of things. And I appreciate that. I want to give a really quick story on this whole contingency thing. I sold my dad's house. Okay, so this is a fun one. So my dad, he had a house. Okay, the person that bought his house had to sell their house. And then, so stick with me here. Okay. So the person that bought my dad's house had to sell their house. So they sold their house to buy his house. He had to sell his house to buy the next person's house. They had to sell that house to buy their house. So we have 5 or 6 contingencies in there.
Was that the most you've ever dealt with?
That was the most.
Chain reaction
that was nuts. So that's one. Yeah, I think that's 5 or 6. So
wow.
But luckily, the 3 agents involved in that transaction, one was from my office, and she was good. The other one was from another company, but he's well known in the community. He was good.
Good.
If there was someone that was screwed up in that,
the weak link,
it would have thrown a wrench into the whole thing. So that was, that was an interesting scenario.
Yeah. So what our point is this gets very, very complicated. Make sure you're working with the right people. So let's look at some options.
Yeah.
You're going to sell your home. And so let's look at a couple of different. One would be, Mike, I mean, this is kind of the obvious one, maybe not so obvious, but let's say you're fortunate enough to be a person that has enough income, right?
Yeah.
Just whatever that number is. Let's say you make $1 million a year and you're getting ready to sell your $1 million home and buy a $2 million home, and technically you could qualify for both.
Right.
I mean, that's
easy enough.
That's the right. I think most people
the ultimate
would say,
scenario,
makes
right?
sense. I could do that.
And you get to keep a piece of property as a rental, which I think ultimately is what all people should strive to do.
But even if they're not keeping it, the lender will lend them the money on the new house,
right?
Even with that house sitting there, because they technically make enough money to cover both mortgages.
Correct.
So,
but if they don't, do you want to talk about that, the rental side of it? Okay.
So the next option would be, okay, I want to go buy a house, but I want to rent the current house that I'm exiting. So let's talk about this, because this happens, I'm telling you, this happens more than you would think, a lot. And I don't blame people. I love the idea. Mike said it before, keeping property, it's great if you could do it. So what you need to be able to do is have the ability to show the lender of the purchase loan on the new property that by renting the home that you're exiting, right, by using those rents, you help those rents or help to offset the income needed for that next purchase. Now, it gets a little complicated, because most lenders, Mike, will say this. They'll say, great, we'll give you credit for that rent on your exiting property, but only if you have rental history.
Right. So how do you do that if you've been living in it?
Someone will say, well, what the hell do you mean rental history? I don't have any rental history. It's the first time I ever rent. I just know I want to keep my house. So here's where, again, working with the right people make a difference, and right investors. Some lenders will not, under any circumstances, give you rent credit for that exiting property unless you have rental history, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But that's their decision.
How much history are they looking for?
2 years.
2 years. So that doesn't make any sense, though, because if you're leveraging your property in another one, you can rent it out.
Yeah.
You're obviously been living there the last 2 years.
Right.
So how do you get around that?
So here's other investors. I'm just to make sure I'm clear about this.
Yeah.
Other investors, we're one of them, New American Funding, who lends our own money. We are one of those investors that have provisions. We'll say, yeah, we'd like to see rental history, but if you don't, fine. Then there's another condition. So what we say is, we don't need any rental history. If you don't have it, that's fine. But what we need is, we're going to ask you to have an additional 6 months of PITI on that exiting property somewhere in an investment or reserve account, just to prove that you can make those payments.
In addition to the down payment you're going to need for your new
and the
property.
Reserves on your new property.
Right.
So let's go through that scenario, because it's a little bit tricky. So let's say you're buying this home for $1.5 million, and you're putting $500,000 down for sake of that, and you're financing $1 million on the purchase.
Okay.
Most lenders will want 12 months of PITI, principal, interest, tax, insurance. They'll want 12 months of that number somewhere in an account sitting there, where it could be a savings, retirement, whatever.
For the new purchase.
For the new purchase.
Okay.
So let's say, for sake of this conversation, it's $10,000 a month. I know that's too much, maybe, but
yeah.
So $120,000 needs to be somewhere in their account for those reserves for the purchase.
Okay.
All right. So then we say, okay, you got that, no problem. That's in your IRA over here. And then they say, you don't have 2 years rental history. So show us where the 6 months of PITI is for your exiting property, the one you want to keep and rent. And so they say, no problem. That's $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year, right?
What if they don't have a payment on it, though? Then the bank doesn't care. What if they don't want to see the taxes and insurance money?
Well, they still want to be able to. So here's what we're trying to achieve on this is that if you have an investor that will account for those rents, then a lot of people, it's easy, especially if people have a small mortgage on the exiting property.
Yeah.
Let's say, especially, the rents these days, right? So let's say they're exiting that property and their total liability is $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
But they could get $4,500 a month for rent. Right?
Will they count that against the reserves on the front side, or no?
No. So what happens is, again, will be, and this gets a little complicated, and I'll keep saying this is why you want to work with people who know what they're doing, is that if they allow you to account for use those rents for qualifying, certainly what you're going to have to do if you're getting $4,500 for rent, then you're going to have to take away what your obligations are, right?
Right.
So you have $2,000 a month. So in essence, you have $2,500 a month. People would say, well, great, I'm $2,500 a month positive. Mm-hmm. Not really, because what the lender does is a couple of things. Typically, they'll give you 75% of whatever net you're looking at. It's just a cushion type thing, right? Yeah. So let's say all said and done, if you have the reserves to cover your new purchase and then the home you're exiting, if you have the reserves to cover both of those, then you're good to go. You could do this, and you could have some net rent, which will help you qualify for the next one.
Very good.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to finish up. Believe it or not, see, that's just one or two options. Yeah. There's 3 or 4 others that we're going to get into. It gets a little complicated. We'll try to keep it simple as we can, but we'll be back to continue in just a minute.
For more information on today's program, visit reradiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.
Hi, this is Joe Kuchera of Real Estate Radio Live. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. We are your go-to resource for all aspects of real estate, including buying, selling, refinancing, building, and legal and tax advice, and much more. You can subscribe to Real Estate Radio Live podcast on iTunes and Stitcher to listen to an engaging discussion about anything and everything real estate. So make sure you get our app, RE Radio Live, in the iTunes store to follow the show.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's topic or guests, just visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Live, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome back in. Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live, the podcast series, sitting next to, alongside Mike D'Ambrosio, as we always do on Tuesdays. The topic today is we're going to really strain the brain today. We're talking about the ability to buy without selling your home. And if you were able to hang with us in the first segment, hang on with us, because some of this may sound like, oh, my God, my head's mush. But there's a lot of moving parts. And the reason why we're going to try to take you through this is because it's important. In a market like this, you want to have all your options. You really do. You don't want to lose out on getting the best for your house, and you don't want to lose out on potentially buying a house without selling your house, without knowing this stuff. And so what I'll say before we jump back in is there's a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of information. It's best that if you're considering or you don't know, just call one of us. Call Mike, call me, say, hey, listen, I heard your podcast, or I'm getting ready to do this. What do you guys think? We don't sell. We educate. Now, if we could help you, we'll help you. But we lead with wanting to do what's best for you, and that's what we'll always do. So let's jump back in. We talked in the first segment about some options. One was if you have enough money, fine, you qualify, do it the easy way. The other one, Mike, we talked about if you could rent your home.
Yeah.
What comes along with that? We kind of discussed that. So let's talk about some of the other things now of potentials that people may not know about.
One of the things is the home equity line of
right.
the home equity line of credit.
Yeah.
And to me, it's a okay. Here's the thing: for people that have gained a lot of equity in the past couple of years and have a possibility of having a home, I think and you can control yourself to not use the home equity line of credit. I'm killing myself over here.
He's not drinking either.
I know.
I can vouch for him.
I know. So, and you can use that home equity line of credit to, if you're not going to use it for buying a boat or buying something else, and you can it's always good to have that on your house as a safe haven, as a fallback. If you can get a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 line, do it. It doesn't, it's just do it.
Right. And
then that is an option to use on a purchase. Now, I think the fallback to that, and you can talk about this a little bit, is then you're going to have additional debt on your old property, so what's going to be your payoff plan with that? So I don't know. So that's another option.
Yeah, so this is another option Mike talks about. Let's say you're exiting your home. You want the ability to buy without selling. And you have a $300,000 equity line attached to your home, and maybe you have a small first. And you say, well, gee, I could use this equity line for part of my down payment to settle that before, or to not, use certain assets. So an equity line is there to help you, again, navigate the purchase, keeping your home. Here's the thing, Mike, that people need to understand is what happens is that you could use that, and really it's your money. And the bank will tell you, hey, you could use that equity line any way you want. Mm-hmm. However, just understand that we're going to hit you with that entire payment.
Yeah, because your payment's going to go up if you use it.
Here's the other thing to remember. A lot of people don't know. Let's say you have a $500,000 line, and you say, great, I'll use $200,000 off this and help this transaction, right? The thing you have to understand is the lender will look at that entire $500,000 and hit you for that liability.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Typically at 1%, because they're saying you have the ability to use that. So it doesn't matter whether you're telling me you're using $200,000. If you have the ability to use $500,000, that I'm going to hit you with a $5,000 a month payment.
Wow.
Just for that equity line. So they're good to have. They're a great vehicle if you want to navigate some stuff. Really, they're really wonderful. I agree with Mike. You should have them, just for all kinds of different reasons and not abuse them. But those are the things you need to know on a home equity line if you're going to try to use one.
So out of all the options, it's not my number one personally, but it's an option.
Yeah, it's an option. And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
The other one is asset depletion. And this one is a little confusing for people that don't hear about this often, Mike. And let me try to explain that the best I can on the radio or podcast. And that is, let's say you, for sake of purposes, you make $10,000 a month, real simple example, and you want to buy the home without selling your home. The lender says, great, we could do that, but listen, you have $10,000 a month. We really need, if you had $15,000 a month income, Mike, we could do this deal for you. You could buy the home without selling your home. Okay. And you say, well, where do I get that additional income? So if you go to your assets, and let's just say someone has $2 or $3 million in investable assets or assets they could use, there is what's called asset depletion program, and there's a formula that we use, lenders use, and we'll say, we'll look at those assets, Mike, and we'll say, what do you need? Well, I need another $5,000 a month income. What will that take? And so the formula, again, I don't want to get confused and go into major detail, but the formula would say, let's say the formula is perfect. In order for you to have $5,000 a month more in income by using those assets, you'll need at least $1.5 million. Okay, so perfect. Right. We have $2 million in there. Perfect. So then what they do is really look at those assets, and we come up with a formula, and in depleting those over a 5-year period of time, someone says, well, great, if I give you $5,000 a month, right, that's $60,000 a year over a period of time plus interest and blah, 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 blah. There's a formula. The bottom line is, a lot of people don't know this. You could increase your income for qualifying purposes by leveraging your assets.
Yeah. Unless you plan on going to the high rollers table in Vegas and depleting those assets. That probably screws up the formula a little bit, right?
Yeah. So here, another one.
So basically you're using, if you have a lot of money in the bank, they basically just use a formula and
give you additional income.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
If it's sitting there. Does that money need to be seasoned?
No. Well, yes. So that's a good question. So if all of a sudden $2 million shows up in an account and you say, I want to use this, it doesn't need to be seasoned as much as verified. Okay. Like, for instance, maybe someone just transferred $2 million from Fidelity to Charles Schwab or something like that, so they have to track that and paper trail that. But yes, it has to be verified where that's coming from. Got it. It can't be coming from Vito's account. So,
hey, Vito, went to the high rollers table in Vegas.
The other one that's interesting too is, how we're talking about leveraging money, leveraging income and assets. Some investors will leverage other assets of property. For instance, they will look at, this is a little bit like bridge loan, but there's, believe it or not, there's some investors will do this too, and I'll give you an example. Let's say you're exiting your primary residence to buy a new one, and you have a vacation home in Tahoe. Okay. That's worth $1 million, $1.5 million, and you owe very little on it. Mm-hmm. There are some investors and even lenders that I work with, investors that will say, okay, so in order to do this, you need another $300,000. Where are you going to do this? Where are you going to get that from? You don't have a home equity line. You don't really have the assets. I'll tell you what, we'll use the leverage and the equity in that home, your vacation home in Tahoe, to make this transaction happen. And then what happens is, when you sell your home, you're going to have to make good for that. Or let's say that they lend you that additional $300,000 based on a certain terms or income, depending on. My point is, there's a lot of different ways to leverage assets, both liquid, investment assets, and actually hard assets like a property. So isn't that kind of like called a blanket loan almost? Is that similar to that? Yeah. Like a portfolio, if you have a portfolio of properties, they basically lend on your portfolio essentially. Yeah, in perfect example. And a lot of, and in kind of the same terms, you'll hear that with investment firms. A lot of investment firms, if you have several $1 million or a lot of money in there, right? They'll just, you could at any time you could go in, people, you talk about HELOCs, right? A lot of investment firms we'll just lend you money based on your assets.
Yeah.
What do you need?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I need, $1 million. Okay, well, here's $1 million at 3% interest. That's what our terms are.
Yeah.
Because we value your, relationship with us.
Yeah.
So, a couple minutes left. There's a lot of different ways to do this. I know a lot of it, when we're talking about it, people, again, might be going, oh, my God, that doesn't apply to me. But you would be surprised how many people might have the ability to do this type of thing and just not know it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I wanted to go back on the example with a lot, because this pertains to a lot of people that I think most of the people listening might be in a situation where they can't afford to buy both, have that house and buy another house, but they can easily rent out their property and then do that, and then buy another house and use the rental income for that. So, what is the situation where, are there any creative things you can do with the rental side of it? So, like, could you move out of your house for a certain amount of time, live with family or something, have rental history, and then that way they won't take away as much from the percentage, or they're always going to use the 75%?
They're always going to use that.
They're always going to use that no matter what.
Okay,
I'm just trying to come up with something off the
No,
wall
but you
here.
bring up a good point. I mean, if someone really wants to be a little more strategic in their approach, I don't know how desperate or how serious they are, but you could, if you wanted to, you could rent your house out, right? Let's say the numbers were good, and not so much that you weren't going to wait 2 years for the rental history. They're still going to give you the same credit for it. But maybe the big one is to make a quicker move is you rent your house out. That's already done. So the lender sees, oh, yeah, I got a year lease with this person at $4,500 a month. They've been renting over here for the last couple of months, so they're ready to go. So we don't even have to deal with the fact that, give us a lease, give us a check, give us a first and last deposit and all that.
Right, okay.
So, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but, if someone wanted to be one step ahead and they were serious about renting their home and they knew they were going to do that, that'd be something else they could do.
Okay,
Interesting.
Yeah, it just popped up in my head earlier on, and I just wanted to revisit that.
The last thing I want to, before we duck out, because it's really important, a lot of people don't know about this, and we do this, but a lot of lenders don't, is if you, and this is strategic, believe me, it takes some people knowing what they're doing and putting the chess pieces together. You could get, you got your house for sale. You go find a house. Great. You find your house. The realtors like yourself, you understand what's going on. The strategy is this. Okay, listen. This house, it's $800,000. We know it's going to sell in a hot second. We're buying this house for 1.5. You get in the contract. The contingency of the terms is that the minute these people get in the contract on that purchase, Mike, automatically throw that house on the market as quickly as possible. You guys are ready, right? Boom. The next day you got that house on the market, MLS, ready to go, open houses. So here's the other thing you can do. Once that exiting home goes into contract and contingencies are released, or maybe there's no contingencies, then the lender of record that's financing the new home removes all those liabilities. So you're done.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now, this is a timing play. We talked about timing. That's the last thing, really important. That would be the last thing. There's some other things, but those are the most important things I could bring up. Lastly, that one a lot of people don't know about is that once you release all contingencies on that exiting property, the lender of record on the new, fine, you're good to go. Show us that contract. Show us everything's released.
Makes sense.
As far as we're concerned, those liabilities are no more.
Absolutely. It's good stuff.
All right, we're going to have to wrap things up. Hopefully you were educated and informed.
Yeah, no, I think that was some good stuff, Joe. I really...
Yeah, that's good.
This is what we do.
That's what we do. Again, if you want any more information, go to RE Radio Live. Contact me or Mike. Either way, have a great day. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Take care.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.